Have you ever looked into a man's eyes and seen a flicker of life quietly fading away, while his mouth still stretches into a practiced smile? You won't catch him sobbing. You won't find him screaming. No. You'll see him politely carrying the grocery bags, fixing the router late at night, nodding along to words he no longer believes, sitting across from a woman who once whispered his name in the dark, and now barely utters a word in his direction. And here's the saddest part. He doesn't even realize it's happening. He mistakes this slow erasure for maturity. He calls it patience. He labels it love. Every time he says sorry for something he didn't do, every time he pretends to be okay when his spirit screams otherwise, every time he forces that gentle smile when all he feels is hollow, another piece of him vanishes. The tragedy? He offered himself up for this willingly. Now let me pose a question few men dare to say aloud. Why do so many women seem to flee from the very things they say they desire? They plead for kindness, yet find themselves drawn to the man who barely texts back. They champion equality, but melt under a man who knows when to take the lead. They insist they want sensitivity and warmth, yet the man who gives it freely often finds himself ghosted without warning. Schopenhauer saw this and called it a biological paradox. I call it a modern crucifixion, where men hang themselves on expectations that were never meant to be fulfilled. And the cruel twist? The women aren't lying, and they aren't malicious. They simply don't know. What they claim to want is the voice of culture, passed down from influencers and friends and therapists. But what they truly respond to comes from something older, far older, etched deep in their nature. And nature doesn't care about your perfect relationship habits. Nature couldn't care less about how many thoughtful texts you send or how quickly you rush to comfort her when her pet dies. Nature programmed her to seek out what will make her feel safe, challenged, alive, not what makes her feel adored. Do you honestly think you can outlove this force? Do you believe flowers, loyalty, and raw vulnerability can rewrite instincts forged over 3 million years? Let me tell you something that will either free your mind or shatter it, depending on how much you've wrapped your identity around romantic illusions. She doesn't crave your love. She craves your gravitational pull. She wants to feel drawn into your orbit, powerless to resist, captivated by the fact that she cannot fully understand or control you. The moment you become predictable, endlessly available, soft and accommodating at every turn, her body may stay, but her attraction will wither. Schopenhauer didn't sugarcoat this. He warned that love in women is governed by nature's agenda, not by personal feeling or fairness. If that brutal truth doesn't pierce your delusions, nothing will. Nature is ruthless in this regard. It selects by filtering out weakness, not with violence, but with absence of desire. A woman does not need to argue with you. She simply stops laughing at your jokes. She does not need to cheat. She merely withdraws the spark from her gaze. And you, confused and wounded, will try harder. You'll buy more flowers. You'll send longer texts. You'll lay yourself bare in hopes of rekindling the flame. And with each attempt, you'll bury yourself deeper in the grave of lost respect. Here's the part no one warned you about. The more you strive to become the man she said she wanted, the more you distance yourself from the man her instincts need to admire. It's not what she tells her friends over brunch that governs attraction. It's what her body, in the quiet dark of her nervous system, responds to. And that language is primal. It's not polite, it's not politically correct. It is ancient, merciless, and utterly indifferent to your good intentions. Perhaps you think you're the good man in her life, the one who loves her properly, who listens deeply, who shows up without fail. But if you've ever had a woman vanish after you gave her everything, here is the harsh diagnosis. You gave too much and became too little. You morphed from the mountain she once longed to climb into the mud beneath her feet. Schopenhauer saw this clearly when he wrote that men are more capable of objectivity while women act as instruments of the species. You aren't being cast aside for being unworthy. You are being discarded because your endless devotion stripped away the tension that fueled her attraction. Think back. Remember when her eyes first locked onto yours with reverence, as if she'd glimpsed something sacred? In that moment, you weren't merely a charming companion. You were a force, a presence, something rare and beyond explanation. For a fleeting instant, you were the embodiment of masculine gravity, and she was enthralled. But then something shifted. You did everything right, became more loving, more available, more present, and yet the light in her eyes dimmed. In its place came politeness, weariness, and a growing detachment neither of you wanted to acknowledge. Why? Because the version of you she first worshipped was not the man who bent to keep her. It was the man who was whole, who invited her in without needing her to complete him. The man with edges, purpose, and boundaries. Schopenhauer understood this. A man can only truly be himself when he is alone, and a man who does not embrace solitude will never taste real freedom. And herein lies the modern tragedy. Most men today are not free. Their emotions are leased to the shifting moods of a partner whose respect has already waned. When that respect dies, the dynamic transforms. The man who was once king becomes caretaker. The masculine essence that once commanded admiration fades into the background. You may hear her say, "You've changed," and in a way she's right. You softened, not in strength, but in spirit. And nature rewards softness only when it is paired with unwavering strength. Let me burn this truth into your bones. You cannot negotiate attraction. You cannot win back desire through loyalty. You cannot beg your way onto a throne you once occupied with effortless presence. The game isn't broken. You were simply taught the wrong rules. You were trained to take her words literally. When she said she wanted communication, you assumed she meant more words. No, she meant a presence so clear it requires no words. When she said she desired vulnerability, she didn't mean endless confessions. She meant a man who had faced his own darkness and emerged grounded, offering his vulnerability as controlled warmth, not desperate need. She isn't deceiving you. She is speaking a language you were never taught to interpret. Schopenhauer saw this with crystal clarity. He didn't offer fairy tales. He wrote autopsies of love and male suffering. In her heart, a woman does not seek understanding. She seeks feeling. And feelings are neither fair nor earned. They are either summoned by the force of your presence, or they are not. You are not competing with other men. You are competing with the magnetism of certainty, with the unshakable calm of a man rooted in himself. If that sounds harsh, good. It should jolt you awake. You weren't born to be lovable. You were born to be undeniable. Manhood is not an identity you perform. It is a depth you embody. The man who embraces this depth becomes a beacon, effortlessly commanding respect. The man who chases affection, who bends and folds to maintain connection, becomes invisible. Every time you smile through pain, nod through disrespect, or shrink to accommodate her shifting moods, you betray your own design. She doesn't hate you for it, but she cannot admire you through it. Here is the truth few dare to speak. She wants to admire you, not the version of you that sacrifices himself for comfort, but the version that stands rooted no matter the storm. She does not want what she says. She wants what she cannot help but respect, and that respect blooms only when you are first loyal to yourself. This is the wisdom Schopenhauer buried between the lines. The path to male enlightenment begins not in resentment toward her nature, nor in shame over your own, but in rising above both with clarity. Understand this: her attraction is not fueled by effort but by energy. Effort is transactional, energy is elemental. You can shower her with gifts and poetic words, but if your masculine core is depleted, none of it will matter. The man with dangerous calm will always outshine the man who tries too hard. You may watch in frustration as she falls for a man who barely lifts a finger. You may call him toxic. You may call her foolish. But what you're witnessing is nature in motion. The body does not respond to spreadsheets of kindness. It responds to the raw, inescapable pool of masculine presence. Schopenhauer wrote that the sexual impulse is the purest manifestation of life's will. That will does not care about your emotional literacy. It seeks vitality, strength, certainty, not perfection, but unapologetic direction. This is why her words and actions often diverge, why she'll post quotes about healthy communication and chase the man who remains an enigma. And you, good-hearted and confused, wonder why your earnestness is not enough. Here is why. You became too safe, too easy to understand, too readily available. The moment she can predict you fully, the dance of attraction dies. Without mystery, there is no tension. Without tension, there is no seduction. And without seduction, you become her emotional employee, not her man. This is not your fault. You were taught to behave this way. Society taught you that niceness earns connection, that transparency guarantees intimacy. But in the primal arena of attraction, mystery eclipses comfort every single time. Schopenhauer warned us of this long before modern dating coaches existed. Women instinctively know that their power lies not in clarity, but in the subtle currents of emotional charge. If you can't read this language, you will misinterpret every signal she sends. You'll think her silence means she is content. You'll think the absence of arguments signals peace. But beneath that still surface, something far colder is taking shape. What you are hearing is not the sound of harmony. It is the funeral hymn of her attraction to you. And this is where most men collapse. In a panic, they try to fill the void with more gifts, more texts, more desperate gestures, but they are swinging at shadows. She is already gone, emotionally. The verdict has already been cast within her, and no act of romance will change that, because you stopped being the man she could not help but admire. Here's what most of us were never taught. Once this erosion has begun, you cannot reverse it through the usual means. No bouquet of flowers, no heartfelt apology, no perfectly planned getaway can restore the magnetic pull that once existed. You cannot revive this bond by pleading or performing. You can only reclaim it by resurrecting your authentic self, and that reclamation begins not with her, but deep within you. It begins the moment you finally say with unwavering resolve, "I would rather stand alone than be unseen in someone's gaze." That decision, that fierce return to self is your rebirth. It is not bitterness. It is not punishment. It is clarity. As Schopenhauer once wrote, those who seek solitude are not lonely. They are awakening to the reality that the external world, especially the social world, will never fully satisfy the soul. Solitude is not exile. It is calibration. In that space, you will remember who you truly are beneath the layers of polite submission you wore for far too long. And when you reclaim your strength, when you sharpen your edge, when you walk into a room grounded and unapologetically whole, you will not need to chase any woman's attention. They will feel your presence before you speak. They will sense that you are no longer the man who bends for approval, but a man whose orbit draws them in without effort. Ironically, this is often when the very women who once drifted away will return, curious, intrigued, hungry for the energy they now sense within you. But this time, you will not be the one seeking validation. You will be the one choosing whether their presence serves your kingdom. There is a grand lie that has been sold to modern men. A lie that says, if you just love her more, harder, deeper, if you simply prove your loyalty with relentless devotion, she will finally reciprocate. That if you become the safest, most stable version of yourself, she will collapse into your arms in gratitude. That if you show her your wounds, your tears, your pain, she will whisper, "At last, a real man." But here is the truth, and I speak it as someone who has bled upon this battlefield, someone who has poured his soul into a vessel that could not hold it. No matter how much you give, if her nature no longer resonates with your essence, it will never be enough. You were not left because you lacked value. You were left because your endless offerings created an atmosphere too sterile, too safe. And in that safety, attraction cannot thrive. It is not that she wanted to leave. It is that her biology left her no choice. You've likely witnessed this phenomenon. A woman falls deeply, almost irrationally, for a man who exudes calm confidence, who is not striving to earn her affection, who moves through the world with an ease she cannot explain. You may label him toxic and her foolish, but what you are witnessing is nature asserting itself. Because at the level of the body, not the mind, love is not an intellectual scorecard. It is a gravitational force. Schopenhauer captured this raw truth when he wrote that the sexual impulse is the purest manifestation of life's will. And that will is not logical. It does not weigh your resume or consider your emotional literacy. It responds to vitality, to power, to unwavering direction, not to perfect sensitivity. This is why you will often hear women speak in contradictions, why she will post inspirational quotes about emotional availability, yet find herself drawn to the man who remains somewhat elusive. This is not hypocrisy. It is the eternal tug-of-war between her socially conditioned mind and her primal instincts. You, the earnest man, are caught in this battle, not because you are unworthy, but because you misunderstood the terrain. You became too predictable, too explainable. She could map your every move before you made it, and in the absence of mystery, tension evaporates. Without tension, seduction dies, and without seduction, you transform. Not into a partner, but into her emotional employee. And no woman dreams of being bound to an employee. She dreams of surrendering to a man who knows where he is going, with or without her. This is not your failing. You were taught the wrong lessons. Society taught you to be polite, to be nice, to be endlessly open. It taught you that comfort equals connection. But within the deeper layers of feminine attraction, mystery always eclipses comfort. Always. Schopenhauer understood this. He observed that women instinctively employ a kind of emotional cunning, not out of malice, but because their desire operates in an entirely different language. If you do not learn this language, you will constantly misread her signals. You will take her words at face value and miss the undercurrents driving her behavior. When she says, "I'm fine," you will believe her, when in truth a man grounded in himself would feel the shift and know that this is not a moment for withdrawal, but for leadership. When her emotions rise and fall like waves, you will call her unstable. But what she is truly asking, without words, is whether your ship can withstand her storm. You cannot offer that steadiness if you have not mastered your own inner world. You cannot be her calm if you are still at war with your own storm. Too many men believe that manhood lies in pleasing, but Schopenhauer would have laughed at this. True manhood lies in endurance, in knowing yourself so completely that even her confusion cannot sway you. When she acts in contradiction, when her moods shift, you do not panic, you do not beg, you do not explain yourself in long-winded texts. You remain rooted, and through that grounded presence, she will either be drawn back toward you or drift further away, and either outcome is acceptable, because your worth is no longer tied to her response. Here is a truth most men are too frightened to accept. You were never meant to make her happy. You were meant to make her feel. And that feeling does not emerge from comfort. It emerges from contrast, from the dance of masculine groundedness meeting feminine chaos, from the tension between her storm and your stillness. You break this dance when you collapse into her moods, when you seek to fix her instead of feel her, when you trade the throne of masculine leadership for the role of an emotional janitor. And that is why she drifts. That is why she later rewrites history and says, "I don't know what happened. I just stopped feeling it." What she is truly saying is this: you allowed me to lead, and I do not want to lead. I want to surrender, but only to a man who knows where he is going, who does not need my permission to stand tall. Schopenhauer warned us clearly, a man who is not master of himself is unfit to master anything, least of all a woman's heart. You must understand this. The world will not teach you to be this man. The world will only teach you to be safe. And safe is sterile, and sterile is unattractive. Women do not crave sterile, they crave depth, they crave mystery, they crave energy, not because they are irrational, but because they are creatures of deep emotional currents. They are built to test your foundation, not to destroy you, but to discern whether you are a man worthy of following when the world burns. And here is the hard truth. You cannot fake this. You cannot read enough books, listen to enough podcasts, or memorize enough clever lines. You either embody this presence or you do not. And if you do not, they will sense it. No woman alive will surrender to a man pretending to be whole. If you are bending and performing to win her, you will always lose her, because deep down, she does not want to be the prize. She wants to belong to a man who has already won within himself. This is the man you must become, not for her, not for approval, but because your soul demands it. If you are hearing these words, I believe you are ready. Ready to stop seeking validation from women who cannot even validate themselves. Ready to walk away from tables where you must beg for what you were born to command. Ready to become the kind of man whose mere presence rewires her nervous system before a word leaves your lips. And once you embody this, you will stop obsessing over her signals, because now you will not need them. You will have become your own compass, and nothing is more magnetic than a man who no longer asks for directions. So if you find yourself abandoned, overlooked, betrayed, do not despair. This is not an end. It is an initiation. Your heartbreak was not punishment. It was preparation. It was the forge in which your true masculinity can be reforged. You will not rise by hating her nature. You will not rise by hating yourself. You will rise by mastering both. Let Schopenhauer's brutal wisdom be your guide. Let your wounds be your curriculum. Let your solitude be your sanctuary, not your sentence. Because in that solitude, you will remember this eternal truth. You were never born to beg. You were born to build. You were born to embody the kind of presence that cannot be bought or bargained for. And when you do, women will either rise to meet you or disappear trying to test you. And either way, you will stand tall, because your worth will no longer rest in their approval, but in your own unwavering essence. That is the path forward. That is the man the world needs now more than ever. And that my brother, is the man I know you can become.